I'm going to do two things now. One, before we do lunch, one thing is to relate the matrix to business. I started having some ideas that we could do this, and I didn't know for sure that we could do it. And so as I presented it again and again, first of all, in the Netherlands, when I was in Brussels, Frans Noben, who's a coach inside of some organizations in Holland, and Peter Kimperman, who's two of our neurosemantic trainers, they said, you know, that what they heard, they just kept translating to business. So we sat down and started mapping it out. And then when I was in South Africa, I was called in to do some sales training inside of a big organization, and we just presented some of this, and the CEO of the company just got really excited. He took what I'm going to give you right now and decided to reorganize his company using the matrix. So if we think about the matrix in terms of some of the structure of it, then we could, instead of putting an individual here, we could put a group of people. It's not in the book. This is why you come to a training, the stuff that is not in the book.
Beginning to talk about the world matrix. Go back to the world matrix.
Not yet. Not yet. No, we'll get to that a little bit later. If we look at the state of a group, a team, a company, a business, a church, a culture, a nation, it applied to any larger group than an individual, then the people in the group having thoughts and ideas and meanings and intentions about why are we together. If they're just a group, then they're not really, that doesn't really come into play. But as they form a group and become a team or a company or a business, and in every business, somebody is setting the frames. In fact, that's the role of leadership, to set the frames, to establish the vision. And so with any business company, whether you start it or whether you enter into it, and there is a set of meanings and frames, maybe historically. So in the time matrix, maybe it's been around for a long time, or maybe you're now generating it. But meaning and intention is going to be the vision statement and the purpose statement and all the things that we say, this is why we work together, and this is what we're trying to accomplish as a group, as a church, as a community, as a nonprofit organization, as a corporation, whatever size organization it is. There is meaning and purpose, and this is where we set the frames. And of course there's the overt frames, the explicit frames that are stated in the literature, by the people, and then there's the covert frames. There's the underlying frames and awarenesses of the other intentions. And so there's the explicit intentions, and then there's the agenda in the background that's more implicit. Every company, there will be states that will be typical of that company or that business or that group. And so what are the states? And so this is where we can feel the feeling of a group with what are the typical states. Are they friendly? Is it a friendly company? Is it a cold, formal company? Is it more informal? Is it open? Is it closed? Is it has a lot of classifications and titles, or is it more personable and there's intimacy there? So what are the states of the company? And do these states serve and enhance and allow the company to manifest their skills, their gifts, their products, their services well? Are the states of creativity and innovation and cutting edge, or conserving and protecting and defensive? So what are the states of a group? When we get to the self matrix, then what is the identity of the group? How do they define themselves? How do they present themselves? So Avis, we try harder, as part of their self-identity. That's who we are, part of the mission, part of the meaning, part of the state. And so we take on, who are we? We are the people who. And so any business will have more alliance and be more aligned and congruent if there's a singularity there, if there's just a whole bunch of people. If some of the identity is, I just work here, I don't have any influence here, I'm powerless here, inside there. So you have sub-identities of the group. In the power matrix, now we're talking about assets. What are the assets of this company? What are the liabilities of this company? What are the resources, intellectual capital, other kinds of capital. So every company has different capital in terms of their product, their trademarks, their brands, and all those kinds of things. So the assets of the company. The time matrix is going to determine how much that company is a historical, classical company that brings a lot of history, tradition. We've been here for a long time. You can trust us, credibility that way. Or present, or current. We'll meet your needs. We're relevant. We respond in 24 hours, that kind of thing. Or future-oriented company. We are leading the way, revolutionary into the future kind of company. In terms of others, we're going to have customers and clients and employees and competitors and suppliers. So what are all the relationships that this company has? And what is the reputation this company has for how they treat their own people, how they empower their people? The relationship's going to be all the political stuff that goes on there. How straightforward are we? How much do we do things by the book, by the contract, by the policy, or is it otherwise, so that we are more personal in that way? How do we treat our suppliers? Who are our suppliers? How do they come in and become a supplier? Or the competitors? How do we think about the competitors? And then, of course, the world would be what is the specific world that they're operating in? Every company operate inside of the political context of a particular government and the world of taxes that they pay in that government and that economy, as well as the world economy. And then what's those particular products and services, and what is the professions that guide and govern? What are the governing boards that would be there? So what is the world that they're navigating and working inside of, and what other worlds may be influencing and affecting that world? So the matrix model then gives us a way to map out how have we structured our business. So one of the things we can do, and you could use this as a modeling to model out a culture, a business culture, and how it works, and what's going on, and what's the content in each one of these, and how it influences, and the groups and the subgroups, the states, the meanings, leading out. If it's a growing company, if it's a stagnant, dying company. And so using the matrix to map that out.
You talk about those frames that are not overt. I mean, what was the term you used for that?
Implicit or overt.
Implicit. And I would say that those were the ones that really govern in most organizations.
So there's the formal communication system, the overt and explicit, and then there's the underlying gossip lines and people who, how does the things really work here apart from the formal charts? And so you have the implicit, explicit.
Move that back to vision statement. Really, sort of should include each of those states. So there should be a vision statement for employees and self, for power and how we look at that, and about time, about others, and about community, how we as a company relate to the communities we world beyond.
I had a question. You had mentioned different states, if I remember this correctly, friendly or strict or open or closed or formal or less structured, progressive, conservative. Those are kind of states, or they're frames, or are you using it interchangeably?
Well, yeah. So great question, because this does show how that we tease this apart, and yet it all comes together. And it's a state of mind, state of emotion, state of experience. It's how we experience, and we can tease it out and notice how these frames about specific content and how we work and how it operates. So it is used interchangeably because it does merge together to identify that.
So a vision statement really only has power to the extent that it truly reflects the meaning and intention about all these. And unless that's really thought through, and the vision statement is just just a slogan then.
Yeah. If the vision statement is just about where we want to go, but it really doesn't say who we're going to become or the assets we're going to develop and the liabilities we'll deal with, that'd be the strengths and weaknesses at the personal level. And so a vision statement, to be holistic, would include all of that. It would pace where we are, and ideally it would emerge from the people, so that's the best way to do buy-in, that as people come to creating their vision and how they play a part and stay active inside of it.
Well, we've seen now that our meaning, that we put the meaning matrix and the intention matrix are really the beginning in our individual, and how they just, if I picture these elements of self-power, these matrices, as you mentioned, the content, they're empty.
Wow.
And as we create the meaning and intention, we start to fill them up, and we do that. We do that off this, and that's who we are as a person. And I see what you're doing in translating this to a business, and it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. The challenge that happens though is, I know for myself, I can meditate myself and work on a better self, power, time, others, world, and bingo, we're in business, and we take an issue and we just run it through and our meaning and intention, and then just load up the other matrices and then charge off and accomplishing things. Trying to do that in a company with various different meaning makers running around.
Exactly. Yeah, you got
trying to get
all
to
these
common meaning making.
Yeah. All these minds and all the differences of.
Yeah. So then you charge off and you think you've got this thing going on, and other people are just responding because you're the boss. Oh yeah, we like that, and more. We tried some of this. In the restaurant, and creating that common sense of purpose and what was important and everything. Yeah. And it's tough.
Yeah, it is. So to create a team, to create a team spirit, to create a sense of community, it is not a quick fix, and there's nothing that will do it quickly. And usually the processes that we do it are very chaotic. Because we have to do what we do at the individual level. What do you think about that? And what's in your back of mind about that? And what's here? And what else? And what else do we bring to this? And is that, so when we coach a team, when we coach a group to become a team, there's the growth of the team from storming to forming to storming to norming, and then finally performing. Finally we get the team to perform and to be a high-performance team. And if we rush it, you are going to be a high-performance team tomorrow. Get it together. So the team dynamics, the group dynamics of the group mind and consciousness, and this is where command and control really is just totally inadequate for this. It just won't work. And where we really have to empower and activate and cultivate, and it's going to take time, which is why any kind of company that does spend time on employee development and bringing people to a consensus or an awareness so that they start to design it, catch a vision. Now the leaders, and they may be the formal leaders or the informal leaders, as the leaders catch a vision and it starts to become, people get excited about it and identify all the values that will support me, which is why I'll buy into something if it ties into my intentions and meanings. It's so much easier for me to be a part of that group. And when the group, when the company, when the church, whatever, doesn't seem to be matching my meanings or my intentions, then there's that ill fit, and then the person becomes a lot of times antagonistic to the whole purpose of the group. So having a real clear purpose and a real sense of what we want to do and the kind of people, now we can profile to hire the right kind of people. And that's where the meta programs become so critical, to hire the right kind of people and to have a real clear, this is how we do business here and our vision and value. Does it fit your values and visions? And then if you have an established company, how to bring the people to that place. And so coaching, team group coaching is an excellent way, and using different kind of group dynamics to bring it about. if indeed the public encounters the business at this level of the line people, then they become really some of the most important people. That's where the action is, and that's where the most energy and the most focus needs to really be, so they're high quality because they represent the company. And so at least what this is just a mapping of one mapping of how to think about it.
Have you gotten any feedback from this particular company about how the development of this is going?
I haven't in quite some time. It's one of the things I haven't done.
Yeah.
And I haven't even kept up with Peter or Franz or what they've been doing with it.
Right. It sounds fascinating. I'd like to get some feedback from who's implementing it from a company perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a huge opportunity, business opportunity here, I think, for coaches.
Okay. Let me go back to Rita first.
Have you seen any more tangible benefits with any of these companies? Because when people are listening and willing to put some of these things in, because at my own company, I'm just thinking, I work at a library, and there used to be somebody at the helm that was so rigid. I've always been there that long with her, so I didn't really feel it. But it felt to a lot of people who I work with that it was like a prison. It was like her way or the highway. And now somebody who has come in totally 360 degrees around. She's brought people in to actually do things with us. We'll go in and we'll have on our special day for employees, we'll talk about, what does it take to, have better customer service. What kind of things do you like? They're listening from us. And now, after about 2 years, 2.5 years she's been there, we're now at a point where I just did it the other day before I left to come here. She sent out these 5 sheets, and each of us did it with a partner. I did mine with somebody else, and I was having a great time with this. Asking us what we thought about this and that and the other, and getting very specific about what do we think about how do we.
So what she's doing is activating the group mind, the group consciousness, to have a sense that I'm contributing, and how it's evolving, I have a say-so in it.
Right. Now, that's wonderful. I mean, a person like me who really wants that to happen and doesn't really like to get into politics of people gossip and they say things bad, and they kind of can cause some friction just in doing that. But there definitely are people who, just say, oh, this is a bunch of trash and it's garbage and it's not going to help. And, just taking that kind of route.
Okay, so the question
what
in the
can
comments?
they do? What can somebody up here do to help those people, and even the people who want to do stuff, but like to be, somehow rewarded, or, hey, you're doing great, or we're really accomplishing this. What can we do? Are there things
the power of leadership is to set the frame. And part of the leadership is creating the conditions that allow it to happen. So setting the frames is, to some extent, creating a vision for people to go toward. And that might help them to self-select to step off that bus. But setting the vision is what the leadership does to create a vision, and that's through communication, that's through coaching, that's through managing, and it's through creating the conditions that will allow this to give birth. Because if you say one thing, but the conditions don't allow it, so that's leadership's role, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow, of how we actually make that happen. And once again, it is the meta-detailing. Once the leader has the vision, then the hard work is what is it going to look like at this level? What is it going to look like at the line level? What is it going to look like how the managers are going to actually be managing and supervising the people?
It seems like the question for me is, what can they say to the group or individuals, like maybe more freedom, more say in what happens,
right?
Or, what can they?
So that's what I mean by they set the conditions. They may want to have once a month for a period of time, a time when people come together to throw out their ideas. They may want to create suggestion boxes. So there's all kinds of things people can do. But the question is meta-detailing, and that's the leader's role, to meta-detail that down and to create the conditions and make the opportunities possible for that to happen. Because if it's just at this level, great ideas, it's not going to happen at this level. So that's where the meta-detailing comes in for those who are actually leading. And the ability to see implicit leaders, non-formal leaders, people who are leading, because they have influence. They're the influence people among the people who people actually look to for how do you do this or what do you think, and they actually have great influence. So influence can be formal, who's appointed the leader, and informal, who actually has influence. And so personal authority versus role authority. And a leader is smart to find the people who has that implicit authority, that personal authority, and to use them. And to put that power to use.
It seems like the one thing that I don't hear them doing, I maybe can bring this back to them, is I don't hear anybody, and this is something that happened there when I was talking to Christine, take that state of each person, because that's, it gets complicated, and bring it up to like, what are your highest...
So that's what we call coaching.
Yeah, well, but what do you want up there?
So that's what we call coaching. So when the manager coaches in that way...
I don't know if there's anybody else
that
can do that, but...
So using that reference, you may be seeing what is not happening, but that's what we call coaching. And when you manage by coaching, that's what they're going to do.
Because then they're going to find out what each individual really would like. So,
exactly.
I want a little more flexibility in, take my break, 15 minutes, 20 minutes instead of 15. I mean, it's like, it's a stupid example, but I'm just saying something that you find out.
This is why managers all over the planet are discovering that if they can create that through a coaching methodology, and why coaching is the substitute for command and control. Command and controlling them is not working. And with independent people who have a mind of their own, is not going to work.
Especially people wanting something different.
Yeah. So we communicate, we manage by coaching. And I'm predicting this, that in the next 5 or 6 years, we're going to see a new job description created in many, many businesses called internal coach. There's going to be businesses hiring people to coach from inside. That's all they do. And it's going to be different from our HR people who deal with most of the laws and stuff. They're going to be people who just travel around doing exactly what you described.
So you're coaching the management like at that level to do that.
And all the way down to the people on the front line.
That is what I do.
Okay. Is that your job description? Job title?
So wide. I don't give myself a job title.
Okay. But I'm predicting that's what's going to happen. That's going to be a new job title, and there's going to be professions that are guard that.
This is the book that's inside of me that I told you.
Okay.
It's on camera, so nobody can take the copyright from me. It's called Reception Perception. Okay? Because it is where that yellow line goes to. It's how those people are perceived. And reception perception is getting the managers to perceive that their reception people are the most important people. And I get them to go in at the very beginning, all of them, and say, this, what you're going to do today is the most important thing because you are the most important people. You can lose more customers than I can. I get the CEO to say that. I get the managers to come in. Some of them sit in the force as well to make sure you're doing a good job. But when we've built up the trust, this is over 2 days, I get from them all that negative feeling, all those frames, I get them from them. They're on the flip chart, I get them from them. That's what goes in my report to the management. And I get the management to work on that. So I've just done that for a new university that opened a year ago. They opened quickly this. They set their meaning and intention. They set their vision statement. Everything was busy recruiting new students, a new year, new faculty, everybody getting together, everybody's gone off and they're doing their own thing, but they all still believe in the vision, but it's kind of fracturing. So I've just done this exact process with them so that now they're getting the complaints and everything so that they can get everybody back on track as they were when they all started the same vision a year ago. Now I'm usually called into companies 10 years after when it's really much of a more mess and they are in their cliques believing things like, oh, we want to change it. Oh, they won't believe that. They won't believe that. By doing it a year on, it's so much more powerful because I usually get called in when it's 10 years down and it's a mess. So that's the book that's inside me. That's the course. And I'll send it to Rita, Reception Perception.
As Wonder Agents was growing, some of the employees were getting overwhelmed with workload and saying, we don't want to grow anymore. I don't want any more until I get more resources. And I says, you ain't getting any more resources. till you grow even more, and the money and the resources will follow to help you deliver the goods. You got to change your attitude. The world isn't going to be perfect before you get what you want. You got to deliver the goods to the client, and we will organize around you.
So tell me how this fits. I'm not following.
It fits that if they have a negative attitude, and I'm focusing on self, the identity of the group. I talk to them individually. I find out where their head's at. I find out what their obstacles are at, and then we have meetings. We have training sessions to break those hang-ups, those negative frames. And many times it comes out, oh, her job, she's overwhelmed, this is overwhelmed. They want the company to be perfect before they want to grow and make money. And it ain't going to work that way, not in today's business.
Okay. There were some other hands.
I just wanted to look at the book here.
Oh, okay.
When's your book going to be published?
Oh, when the passion can get challenged.
Christine?
I have a question. In regard to, if you had a company or a community that was disproportionately high in sort by difference that enabled them to do whatever the purpose was, what types of, how does that affect the vision statement for each one of those areas, getting them more congruent and in line in a sense of community?
Okay. So people who sort for difference and mismatch could certainly be in the power of the resource part of the company. They're the ones who are creating the new and different things. We wouldn't want to put them on the front line because they couldn't handle customers. They would turn customers, clients, people off.
Right. I understand that.
So,
but I'm wondering if you had, if the company or if the community of people that you're dealing with.
Everybody mismatches everybody?
In order to do their job, they have a really high sort by difference.
So like what job would they be doing to do that?
Police officer. That's my view of
Sort
their
for difference?
Yeah. Inability to walk into a situation and know what's off, wrong, and missing.
Yeah, see, what I know about that is I would say it's different.
Okay.
I would not say that that's the meta program that drives them. I did the diffusing hotheads training in Houston, Texas at the police department there, and we brought in 35 policemen and then did them for a day, and the next day 35 more. And police tend to be so of the authoritarian personality type. So what's important to them is control. So in terms of meta programs, it'd be judger versus, I mean, they don't perceive anything. They're the judger.
So are you saying that I need to change my world?
So I don't see them as mismatching.
Okay. So you see them as...
In fact, most police officers...
authority.
Most police officers, when they're not going after criminal, they're keeping the peace. And that means that they have to have some real skills in getting along, talking to people.
Right.
Now they come from an authority, and they as an authority personality type, they like control. I just don't see them mismatching.
Right. I guess for me it relates to having the expertise coming in to talk to them. The credibility is important.
Exactly.
And they sort by difference in that. So maybe that's just something that I need to address in establishing the credibility.
Okay.
Thank you. It answered my question.
Now, of course, inside of a police department, you've got the patrol officers, you've got the people handling the emergency lines, the 911 lines, you've got the supervisors over the police officers.
More in a national association of leaders in that profession.
Okay. So anyway, you can see how that we can use this to map things, and then to see what's strong, what's robust, what's well mapped, or where there's some damage or hurt or some toxic stuff going on that prevents community, prevents it becoming a team from people working together collaboratively, and being able to play the different roles. And it seems to me that's where, if you're working with a group or a company, if you're coaching a company or going in doing consulting, asking who plays these different roles, because you need people who can play the role working with the public, and so they need to be the matchers. You need the mismatchers somewhere in there who can do the testing, and after a product is created, who can put it to the test before it's just thrown out. So we need these different roles. We need people who can lead and who can support and nurture people. So there's all kinds of roles within that, and asking how do we put all this together so that it is well balanced. So, well, this is one tool for working with business. This afternoon I want to take the matrix and talk about how to make a business plan with that. And so we'll pass out some materials so that you can begin to meta-detail that out. And then we'll go look at the world matrix and what that's involved, and that's the last one that we'll be looking at in terms of the content of that one. So we're right at 1 o'clock, so we'll be back at 2:15. The last matrix to look at formally and just to think about how it works and what we mean by it is the world matrix, and this is 92. And we mentioned a few days ago about the content matrices and how one of the things we all do, we start looking for what's out there, and we start mapping different worlds. So the world matrix refers to the actual world, the literal world, the environmental world, but so many other worlds, conceptual worlds and things. So this is what we're referring to as all the different contexts or worlds in which we act and relate. So it can refer to work and career, it can refer to expertise in a given field, to recreation, to so many other things, the world of professional organizations, physics, economics, politics. It's all the ideas. It's really not the world, it's our maps of those different worlds. So developmentally, we began exploring the world when our self had the power to move and adapt, and the way we map our sense of the world, since it affects back to our sense of self and other and our power to interact with it. So we're asking questions like, what is the world like? What is any given world like? Is it friendly? Is it unfriendly? Is it a place of scarcity or abundance? Is it fearful or exciting or dangerous or wonderful? And so we move out. As we move out, then ego strength is this ability to face the world. So the matrix of self and power combining to make ego strength to face whatever's out there, and we start mapping that, and that's our world matrix. As we map that, the ability to adjust effectively to society or to the world is called ego strength, and so to accept what is as a given, to inquire about it, how to cope with it, how to master it. Adjusting well is the definition of sanity. Unsanity refers to the lack of a good and healthy adjustment. And of course, insanity means a break with our sense of reality of the world. So here's about adjustment. How well adjusted are you to, how well adjusted am I to anything? So the world matrix governs all these worlds that we call social, political, economic, business, career, racial, just all those different worlds, and the worlds that you have some experience and skill in navigating. So the significance of this, of course, is if you don't have a map, it's awful hard to go there. So a great deal of learning is mapping these different areas. If you're not familiar with finance, how to read a financial report, how to do budgeting, how to do a business plan, then that would be a world in which to go navigate and learn how to do those kinds of things. So the meanings we map about any given world leads to and creates our styles for coping with it. So the second paragraph under significance and importance talks about your orientational style, your modus operandi. Well, modus operandi comes into linguistics as your modal operator. So do you operate in the world as if it's a world of rules, what you have to do, must do? Do you operate as necessity, impossibility, possibility, desire? So this is where how you language that. I get to go to work versus I have to go to work. I have to write a business plan. I get to. I want to. I can. So the world matrix is this matrix about all the different things we map in those areas. And of course, anytime we're having a new experience, then one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, what worlds do I need to be able to navigate to even understand that world? So it dawned upon me once upon a time that I had not even read a single book on real estate. So the world of real estate was a world in which I had some kind of common sense things, but also really didn't know that world. When I started reading, I discovered within 2 months I was doing 7 things that the people who knew how that world worked, 7 things that I was doing really wrong. And so making new maps and then making adjustments to enter and deal with that. So that's the world matrix. I don't think it's really difficult to understand. It now gives us the ability, kind of almost a large category for putting lots of stuff in the different worlds that we navigate.
Like, what would be one example of something that you didn't know that you read?
Well, yesterday, I think I mentioned that one of the things was about taxes, and so forth, and so I was doing that in a major wrong way, because what I learned, I could turn each property into a separate business.
Which sort of categories is differently than would be better for you to do for taxes?
Yeah, so it just was significant. I didn't even know about 1031 exchanges. A couple of years around that time, maybe a year before that, the government released capital gain tax here in this country. So what I learned is I could sell one property, all the equity, paying no tax. I could just buy another one. And once it was purchased, after 2 years of renting it, I could move into it, claim it personal property, live there 2 years, sell it, no tax.
$250,000 on your part.
Yeah, well, I didn't have that problem, $250,000. So I like the idea of not paying taxes. And if it's a legal, legitimate way, so knowing how something works, and so there were several different things, and out of that process, I learned how to pick people and many other things. Other comments on the world matrix and the different world matrices that you may be navigating in and out? So this leads us to, and we won't do this exercise right now because there's some other things I'd like us to do, but you can do the exploration of world matrices on page 94. Identify a facet of the world that you're interested in. And here's an example, maybe some facet of the business of coaching. Or what do you find challenging about, if it's running a restaurant, if it's being an entrepreneur, if it's whatever it is. And then explore that matrix about that item. How is it challenging to you? Why is it challenging to it? What do you think about it? What memories come to you? What imaginations? What hopes? What fears? So what we're doing is just looking at that matrix around that facet. So selling. What facet of selling turns you off or seems challenging to you? Or marketing. And then we just explore the matrix around that, how the meanings we created to it, the intentions, the default intentions, and then we can step back, do a systems check, the way I think about that and all the mappings and the model of the world, does that really serve me well? And then playing around with possibilities for transformation and identifying preferred frames, so then we can just build up a whole new matrix around that specific thing, and it just gives a way for dealing with. Several people asked me with regard to writing, developing, creating a business plan, and this is what we do in the Meta Coaching program, and so I copied the pages from there. That's where the page numbers are. And what this is a matrix business plan. So does everybody have a copy? Anybody need a copy? Okay. Anybody else need a copy? Everybody got a copy? So you can use this in 2 ways. You can use this to design to create a business plan for your business, your company, if you're going to start one, or if you have one, you can rework yours. Or if you're inside of a company, you can use this for your own personal career development. Personal career development. so that you would shift the questions just a little bit and the focus a little bit. But this will walk you through each matrix of the matrix model, and you can see each page has 10, 12, 15 questions, and as you answer those questions, it'll lead you into the different facets. Sometimes you'll need to go answer some of the other matrices and then come back to some of them. And when you get done, you'll probably have a 20 or 30-page document that will identify what's my intent, what's my goals, what's my outcomes, where do I want to go, what meanings do I want to give that will support me, how's this significant, and what is it like, and all the meanings. And then the states, you'll identify your top 10 business states to do business. So when you get to the state matrix, it'll ask questions like that. I think that's the fourth one.
I noticed in several different places as we looked at this matrix model, in the book and presentation and this manual, and then finally in this set of pages, they all seem to be in a different order and being sequential, I figured. Is there some reason that would say you have them in a certain order in one book and a different order in another?
Yeah, each one seems a little different. Like this one here with the business plan, what's your intent? So we start with intent. And then what world are you operating in? So that locates, what am I specifically dealing with? What world? What business? What world does this business interact with? So what are the other kind of worlds? And this, obviously, I pulled out of the coaching, so you'll see it's related to coaching a lot. What are the professional associations that influence this field? What is this field of this world? And then, given my intents, given the world, now what are the meanings that I want to make and create? How is it meaningful to me and significant? And then what stage do I need to be in? And then we fill out the other content. So, yeah, it is a little different in that sense that it all depends on what we're seeking to do with anything. And it's in this order for the business plan. Okay. The coaching manual. That's coaching.
What do you mean by what are the primary states of this business? I mean, I understand for a person, for business.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that question?
Well, what are the states? What is the business you would think of?
Consultancy firm?
Consultancy. So what would be the ideal states as a consultant?
Okay.
What states do you need to be in as a consultant? What would be the most ideal and powerful state? So the business of consulting, what states do you need to be in?
There's no money matrix.
Yeah.
Is that deliberate?
Well, it would fall into a number of different things. Your intention may be to be profitable. I mean, is your intention to be profitable or not? And then what? So that's where intention sets. What is the goal? What's the outcome? And then we fill in the details. Who do I need to be to do that? What states do I need to be in to do that? What would that mean to me as I make a profit? Make a profit and the significance of that. So the content stuff gets filled in around, and this is just a structure, just a template, a format. And the power of this is that it really connects it to life, to life and to your, and so aligns you with who you are in doing that. Some of you know I wrote a little thing on the website about going to South Africa, and some of our people had taken this material and given it to some teenagers. They gave it to a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 16-year-old. There's 3 teenagers who took this. They lived inside of a place called Kids Haven, and Kids Haven was a non-profit organization to take kids off the streets, off of drugs, and a lot of them didn't have any parents. Their parents had died of AIDS, and bring them in Kids Haven that contains 200, 300, 400 kids that they're handling at any given time, and those teenagers filled this out for Kids Haven Corporation, and they came up with 20 pages of the intention of Kids Haven, of the meaning of it, and they wrote a full business plan. And so they were coached about how to do that. They were turned loose, and when we arrived there, they presented us a document, a 20-page document, a business plan. And when I grabbed that, the first thought I had is, I know grown men who cry when they see this. And here's some teenagers who sat down and walked it through, just answering the questions and designing it, and they gave it to the staff as a present. It was part of their thank you and their appreciation, and they gave it to the staff, and the staff went through it, and they were amazed with it. So this is something that I would recommend. Obviously, it's going to take some time to do, detailing it down, but you've been through a lot of the matrices now. And my guess is some of you can just start filling it out. So it might be something you'd like to do in terms of creating a business plan. Once you have the life business plan, you could pull out the financial parts, because some of it will ask, well, who's going to be your market? How are you going to reach them? How are you going to contact them? What's your plan? How much money do you need? What kind of capital? So it asks those kinds of questions. You can pull that part out if you need to submit your business plan to a bank. But you would have it connected to who you are and what drives you for it. Stacy?
You have the content matrices, you have the three, or you have the state and the two process ones. Are you going, I've seen you do like maybe intention and then go through all of them, then meaning go through all of them, then state go through all of them. Is that another approach? Mm-hmm. Or is that kind of built into it? Or
it is built into it. So the meaning and the intent fills the content, fills up the empty categories of those content ones. So that's how that works.
Okay.
So we can go a couple different ways. My feeling is if I give you some time to begin filling this out right now, that might be useful.
We can work with somebody.
So you could work with someone, you could work with yourself, and let's take 20 minutes and just fill out as much as you can to get the start, because then there might be some other questions and how to use it, and we're glad to kind of play with that. So let's take 20 minutes. If you want to work with someone, that would help to kind of brainstorm and each of you write, or if you want to just write by yourself, we'll just stretch out and do that. A problem is what allows us to have business. Without a problem, without a difficulty, without a gap, the definition of a problem is the gap between present state and desired state. This is on page 98, and on page 98, you'll probably need to fill in a little bit of the diagram there. The diagram is really present state with somebody not in a pleasant state, somebody who's wanting to move away from something or move towards something. And whatever that desired state is, and then the resources that enable us to move from one to the other, a problem is the gap between. So by definition, we describe a problem as the gap between the two. What is a problem? How do we define a real problem? Too oftentimes in business, quick fixes are applied to perceived problems and is only realized afterwards that the fixed solution only fixed the symptoms and not actually that which caused it. So a problem is the gap between present state and desired state. We speak about this difference, gap, when we speak about the quote-unquote problem and then solving the solution that solves that gap. The word problem always identifies a present/desired state difference, is what Michael Grinder says. A problem is defined as any difference between present state and desired state. And so we identify that, and we can use the SCORE model. In the SCORE model, the causes, the things that cause the problem for us, since a problem is a concept and it's our thinking, feeling about it. And then, of course, the symptoms, all the symptoms that come out of it, and the way we feel, the way we speak, all the consequences, the symptoms that come out of it. The contributing factors may be different factors from environment, from different influences, which we may call a cause. The outcome is that desired state that we want, and when we get that, then there's going to be certain effects. There's going to be certain results that comes out of that, the symptoms from the desired state. And of course, the resources is what moves us from one to the other. So the resources is what solves the problem. So as we define a problem as the gap between present and desired state, then we speak to the gap. We identify the gap. We define the gap. We bring resources to that gap to close the gap. Now, this is something in NLP that is real basic. It's basic to selling. We sell to the gap. If a person, if there's no gap between present desired state, then they really don't want anything. There's no. So sometimes in selling, we help to create more of a gap so that there's some need or some desire, some solution that is given. So what is a problem? Because once again, here's just a normalization. It is the difference between desired and present state.
A problem is I want, I need, a nice to have, I got to have, a desire. All the various words people use at their own linguistics. And I give them resources to get it.
Right. So it's the gap between where they are and where they want to be.
Right.
So as a problem solver and as someone in business who is looking for problems and solving the problem, we have a well-formed outcome pattern. Everybody know the well-formed outcome pattern? What's inside of it? What's the criteria for well-formed outcome pattern? If you want to create a well-formed outcome, a well-formed desired end.
Sensory specific.
Sensory specific.
Are you in control?
Can you do this? Are you in control of it? Can you make this happen?
Evidence procedure.
What's the evidence? How will you know when you have this outcome?
Is it ecological?
Is it ecological? Mohammed?
What does it sound like, feel like? What does it
So sensory specific, describe it very specifically, precisely.
Positive, what you want, moving towards instead of what you want.
Okay, so the first one we say is stated in the positive, make it sensory specific.
Measurable. Measurable. I want to
Measurable.
Yeah.
Sorry,
measurable.
I thought you said miserable.
Miserable.
So measurable, we can measure it, and so we have evidence procedure to be able to measure it.
What's stopping you having it
Measurable
already?
time.
What's stopping you having it already?
So looking for the resources. What resources can you bring to this? So a well-formed outcome. And it's in NLP, you learn that day one, hour one, usually, because that's where we always start. In coaching, that's where we start. A well-formed outcome. I want to introduce a well-formed problem.
Oh, good.
A well-formed problem. Obviously, if you don't have a well-formed outcome, if it's ill-formed, if it's not well-structured, how will you ever know if you get there? And if your outcome is, I want other people to like me, and it's outside your control, then it's not well-formed. But what about a well-formed problem? So I've taken this from what Martin Roberts did in his book on change management excellence. And so on page 99, you can see the contrast here between a poorly or badly formed problem and a well-formed problem. And we've got 7 distinctions here. They're a little different, some similarity with a well-formed problem, but we've got, once again, specificity. What actually is wrong? How do you know something is wrong? What's the worst example of this? How do you define it as a problem, a difficulty? Problem to whom? Problem in what way? Problem to what extent? So we can ask lots of questions on specificity. Then we start asking boundary distinctions. Where does it begin? Where does it become a problem? At what level, what time does it become a problem? Who is affected by this problem? Who else is affected by it? In what area does it occur? And so the boundary distinctions. The time element. When does it occur? How long does it occur? Have you had this problem before? Is it reoccurrent or is it continuous and the duration continues? So the time element. The specific causes and contributing influences. What caused it? What contributes to it? What will happen if the problem remains? How have you tried to solve this problem? What are the attempted solutions so far that have not worked? And how did you go about that attempted solution? What specifically did you do? The political frame / dimensions addressed. What is the explicit company policy about this? The implicit policy. Who wants this problem solved the most? Who does not want it solved at all? And so now we're getting very specific into the political frames that's involved. The symptoms specified and recognized as symptoms, not causes. What are the symptoms? Because oftentimes, if you think the problem is the symptom and you solve that symptom, you still have not solved the problem. It's just the symptom of the problem. How do the symptoms dominate focus and attention? What is the actual problem behind, above, around that symptom? Are we solving the problem source or just a symptom? And then the ownership, whose problem is this, and who's responsible for solving it, and who can be a part of the solution. So here are 7 distinctions for a well-formed problem, and you can see the opposite. When a problem is ill-formed, poorly formed, it's going to be real general, it's going to be real vague, it's going to be real abstract. There's going to be indistinct boundaries, so we don't know actually where it starts and stops. We don't know when it occurs, or how long it occurs, or what kind of a sequence and pattern it has. We don't know where it comes from, what contributes to it, what are the contributing factors or causes. These dimensional factors, political dimensions, will be unaddressed. A focus on many symptoms, maybe focusing constantly on the symptoms rather than the causes, and nobody owns it. What's that?
Not my problem.
Not my problem, yeah. His problem. Not my problem.
Another question you can ask on time is the problem there all the time? Because you may find that it only happens when John's on duty, not when John's on duty. So that's another one.
Okay. It would happen all the time.
Yeah.
So this gives us some ways now to start exploring. Just as a demonstration, who's got a problem? And it's a problem that you're facing in your business, problem you're facing somewhere, a problem that you're not even really clear about the problem, because part of what makes us feel helpless and hopeless is that we think of the problem and it's so vague and general and it's not well defined. And so a problem well stated is half solved, we say. Problem well stated is half solved. So oftentimes just meta-modeling some of these details, and since our theme today is meta-modeling, now we're going to meta-model a problem and get it well-formed. So if you spend time focusing on a problem, and while we want solution focus as part of business intelligence, clearly defining a problem is also part of business intelligence. So does anybody have a problem? And we may solve it, we may not, but at least we can begin to get some more clarity around it. So we'll start by just trying to define this problem. If you were to define the problem, what's the problem?